Hey everyone. Now, normally I'd probably be doing a live stream right now, but right now my LTE is at 2G, and even though that might be allow me to do live stream, it gets a little slow when it comes to internet connection. So I'm just recording it as I would do a regular recording with my camcorder at home and all that. But I thought I'd come out here and I want to talk about something. Now, I asked the question. Now, Select Daddy, Jeff Shiegel of OTR Central and Select Daddy TV only answered it once. Only answered this question that I asked about the playoff system. You see, the college football playoff, even though it sounds like a good idea, and so far has proven to be, I guess, all right in its current format, basically still results in controversy. And sometimes folks, will result in us getting all conference national championship games. In other words, two teams in the same conference. Now, I'm not saying nothing like that. Now, I'm not saying that's not bad or anything. But it's like, isn't the point of the college football playoff, or any college playoff, isn't it the point to see who the two very best conferences are, thus allowing two of the very best teams that there is out of those conferences to compete? Not have the same team from the same conference? You know, it would make a lot more sense in the eyes of a lot of people, a lot of fans. You know, a lot of people question why even Alabama got in this year besides name recognition and as an at-large. I mean, Alabama losing the way they did, losing earlier in the season, should have been an indication that maybe they shouldn't be in. I mean, they lost to Auburn, of all teams, so shouldn't have Auburn at least been given that at-large bid? I'm just saying. But this is the one thing I think's wrong with. But here's the thing that I feel that's wrong with the college football playoff. It's not just all about the money and who can attract the most viewership television-wise and attract the most attendance from people that are willing to travel. And it's not just name recognition as well. The biggest problem is you're only limited to what? 4, 5 conferences? Am I hearing that right? So you're limited to the SEC, the ACC, the Big 12, the Big 10, the Pac-12, and that's it? You had one school this year that was undefeated out of the American Conference, the AAC, the All-American Conference, or whatever it's called. And you don't allow them to get in, even though they're undefeated, and that's Central Florida. And oh, by the way, they stayed undefeated when they beat Auburn, who was in the SEC championship. So I ask you honestly, what sense does that make? What sense does it make to leave out the All-American Conference, or American Conference, if you will, which was originally the Big East Conference, which, by the way, used to be, a big power conference. Why leave them out? You see, this is why some people like Jeff feel they need to expand, seeding rise. Because essentially, you're leaving out one or two teams. This is the way you should go with it. You have 5 major conferences, right? When in fact you should have 6. You should have 6 slots instead of 4. Those 6 slots should be filled by a champion from the Big 12, a champion from the Pac-12, a champion from the Big 10, a champion from the ACC, a champion from the SEC, and a champion from the American Conference or the Independents. That is what you should be doing. That is what you should do with your standings. That is what you should do. You should expand it from 4 to 6, because that way you add in the American Conference and you have it champions against champions. You put the champions against each other. You don't result in it being, oh, well, this team's name recognition and they've proven themselves to be worthy, let's put them in, like Alabama. Look, nothing against Alabama, but Nick Saban as a coach has proven that if the opportunity arises, he will leave for either another school and coach there, or he'll leave for the NFL and coach there. He's proven that in the past, and there's no doubt he would do it again. The point is, the college football playoff system, if you're not going to change it to where the highest seeded school hosts a semifinal game, if you will, instead of using 2 elite bowl games, in this case recently, the Rose and the Sugar Bowl as semifinal areas, if you're not going to do that, then at least I will agree, expand it to 6 teams and make it champions only. No excuses. Make it champions only, with the occasional, independent selection should maybe a certain champion not have the requirements, win-wise or strength of schedule-wise or whatever you call it, to be considered for the playoffs. Leave that 6th slot open for a conference champion or an independent that is leave the slot open for a conference champion, or leave it also open for an independent school, powerhouse, whatever you want to call it, that can go in there and get an opportunity. Think about it this way. Let's say next year is Navy, American Conference, or independent. I don't really know. The point is, okay, let's take a look at what schools are independent. BYU. Let's take a look at BYU. Let's say BYU has a tremendous year next year. Does what Central Florida does, or did this year, and goes undefeated. Shouldn't BYU be considered in the discussion of being in the playoffs if a conference champion doesn't have the requirements or the win record that's necessary to get in, even though they've won the conference championship? Of course BYU should get in. Of course BYU should be considered. That way, at least they would have an opportunity to go in there and face whoever was basically the champion. At least they'd be able to go in there and face whoever the other champion they'd be facing is, whether it's someone like, let's say, an Alabama or a Clemson or whatever. At least they'd have an opportunity to prove themselves. The point I've always thought about the college football playoff system when it was announced is to see who the very best school is, the very best team. And shouldn't the very best school team be the ones that are champions, the ones that have won their conference titles? I'm just saying. I think honestly that should be how the playoff system works. You shouldn't show favoritism to a school that didn't even won the division title or win the conference overall. You shouldn't favor that person or that school. And that's what happened with Alabama. The point is, you should give other schools opportunities. That's the way I look at it. And if a school doesn't have enough wins, like let's say the requirement is you got to win 10 regular season games at least. When the requirement is win 10 regular season games at least, so that way you will be considered for a slot in the championship. or in the playoff. Win 10 games in regular seasons, win your conference championship, then you can get in even at 11-2. It makes sense. It makes sense, in my opinion, that if you go and give them that requirement, hey, you got to win 10 games at least to get in, and maybe 9 games to be considered, then leave it at that. And if they don't have those 10 games or those 9 games, and if they don't have those 10 games under the belt, and maybe even 9 games, or even with the 9 games, then give it to an independent school that has the credentials, has those wins under its belt that's necessary to get in. I mean, heck, you have freaking Liberty coming into FBS play next year and won't be bowl eligible until about a year later. How about this? What if Liberty ends up going undefeated in their second year? Shouldn't Liberty be considered maybe for a bowl be considered in a playoff picture? I'm just saying. The point is, the college football playoff system needs to change. And if it's not going to change by taking bowl games out of the equation and having the highest ranked schools hosting, or highest seeded schools hosting the semifinals at home, then at least expand it to where you include conferences like the American Conference, and maybe the Mountain West Conference, perhaps, well at least more so the American Conference, because it used to be the Big East Conference. At least expand it to 6 slots, where you would have SEC, Big 12, ACC, Pac-12, Big 10, and American. Well, did I say that right? Let's see. SEC, ACC, Pac-12, Big 12, Big 10, and American. Yeah. At least have it expanded to that point. And at least expand it to where the conference champions only can be the ones that contend, that are eligible to compete in there, unless one doesn't have the record that's the requirement, or the record 10 games at least under the belt. Then give it to an independent school, like let's say a BYU or Notre Dame, or maybe in a few years a Liberty or UMass or whatever. Do it that way. And I guarantee you, if you do it that way, people will tune in more, people want to watch it more, people will enjoy it more. In fact, it will put a positive spin in on the whole college football postseason. It'll put a positive spin, and it'll basically put the college football season in a new light in the end, because people will be like, okay, this is what we want to see, this is what we want. So in my opinion, honestly, if anything needs to change about the college football playoff system, that expanding to 6 teams and being champions only, or at least have a record if you're an independent that qualifies you for it. That should be how it's done. Hopefully they'll start working on that in the future. I would like to see that, because I guarantee you, even if you don't use bowl games, or you continue to do so, at least it gets people excited for more. So let me know what your thoughts are on it. Comment down below. I got to get back into work, and I'll talk to y'all later.